been quiet down there. Good morning, everyone. We are here today for our markup session. So I just wanted to introduce everybody. My name is John Quincy, and I'm chair of the City Council's Ways and Means Committee as well as this Budget Committee. With me this morning are council members, I'll start at that end, Cano, Fry, Goodman, Council President Johnson, Council Member Andrew Johnson, Council Member Bender, Vice President Glidden, Council Member Palmisano, Yang, Reich, and Gordon. And so thanks for all for joining us. Today we're going to be considering the mayor's proposed 2017 budget for markup and recommendation to the full city council. This gives all council members the opportunity to bring forward any amendments, which if approved would be incorporated into the final budget presented to the council for its approval on Wednesday. As a reminder, this committee's report will be presented at the council's adjourned session Wednesday, December 7th, which will start with a public hearing on the final budget proposal beginning at 6:05 in this chamber. Before we get started, I wanted to give special thanks to a terrific team of this committee and staff of this committee. We have first our budget experts, Mark Ruff, as well as Latonia Green, who have helped to guide our review of the mayor's budget proposal and done a significant amount of work to bring us to this point in the process. And also our clerk, Kelly Giesler, who's kept track of our progress and ensured that our budget documents are all posted on the website for public access. Colleagues, we've spent the past few months conducting hearings on each of the department's proposed 2017 budgets and recommendations for program reductions, enhancements, or additional appropriations. All those 31 different presentations have been posted to our budget website, along with the mayor's original budget proposal and presentation. I'd like to go over the process we're going to follow this morning. First of all, we're on speaker management, and so that would be appreciated because it's hard to manage with tags. So as we begin that, here's our process. We'll take up questions to the overall process, and after we proceed with the agenda after that. By tradition, the chair usually sponsors a series of amendments that are more technical in nature. These items are intended to help clarify the mayor's original proposal or which respond to developments since the mayor presented her budget, including changes at the federal, state levels that can and do have impact on the city's budget. These technical amendments are usually sponsored by the committee chair and are developed by the departments with the assistance of the finance department. So the first action we're going to be considering today is the series of those technical amendments. After those are handled, I'll call for a vote on the entire series of those amendments as a package. There's also going to be several staff directions associated with that. After we've addressed those amendments, I'll open up the floor to further amendments that any council member may be bringing forward today. As a reminder, for the purpose of today's meeting is to bring forward as many amendments as possible so that the staff has ample time to reformat the budget package prior to the presentation to the council on Wednesday. I understand that there's always going to be late amendments that develop after markup, and we expect that. However, if there are amendments that are ready to go today, we appreciate having them all brought forward for consideration at this meeting and to the clerk's attention, and we'll make sure at least copies for the public and the council members are presented and shared as we're called forward. So after all that, I'll be moving approval of the mayor's proposed 2017 budget as amended by this committee. So in brief, that's the game plan. We're going to take up the technical amendments. We're going to take up individual amendments by council members. Then we'll take up the entire budget proposal with amendments made today for a final vote on Wednesday at the full council meeting. Are there any questions on that process? To be clear? Good. So let's begin that. So as we get started today by taking up those technical amendments and some staff directions that I'm going to be sponsoring as part of the chair's motion, you should have at your place as an outline of those amendment packages. And I've asked Ms. Green or Mr. Ruff, if you could help go through those as an overview. I don't think we need to spend lots of time with them. That would be really appreciated.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mark Ruff, Chief Financial Officer. I appreciate the Chair's comments about the staff's work. I'd like to add a couple of other people to the thanks. First of all, Mike Ablin, our capital budgets person who puts together and works long hours with the CLIC committee is here as well as Latonia's staff. Brad, Gina, and Jeffrey are here as well, who work exclusively on the budget and just do a wonderful job. So as a relatively new person to the city, I just want to compliment the city on having very quality staff to support those of us in our positions. On the Chair's amendment, I will quickly run through what I understand to be the changes, and Mr. Chair, you can correct me if there's anything. There are some technical changes to how we are funding the Upper Harbor Terminal project in the early stages, and these are non-tax levy related changes. It's really just reallocating the use of fund balance, both for $135,000 amount and then correcting $980,000 as a replacement. There is additional program revenue that's being received from the CDBG program. We periodically receive loan repayments and land sales, and that increased amount is $596,000. There are grants that we're receiving that we were not aware of during the time of the mayor's budget formulation. They have come in since then, $1 million on the recast. And then the police department also has a new FTE and a grant for sex trafficking in the amount of $117,000. There are also changes to some of the financial policies. These are, I believe, to be technical. One is just a clarification that there was an ordinance passed regarding public art, and that amount of capital budget in net debt bonds that should be allocated to public art should be clarified as it is reflected in the ordinance to be in the policies of 1.5% of the annual net debt bond amount. Second of all, there is a technical amendment in the financial policies that relates to how we set interest rates for internal loans for different projects. And the other technical amendment has to do with the ability of the city to issue tax-exempt bonds for previous expenditures and how we estimate that. We're going to a consistent, which we used to do more consistently, but a consistent description of 125% of the budget to be able to be reimbursed with tax-exempt bonds. That's pursuant to IRS regulations. So, Mr. Chair, I think those are the majority of the technical amendments. If I missed any, certainly correct me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruff. I just wanted to check in with Ms. Green. Were those technical amendments, is that an accurate list that was on the outline? I know it was what was being shared with council members, but did it match up with previous discussions?
Chair Quincy, committee members, that is the complete list.
All right, thank you very much. And is it appropriate to take up those 2 additional staff directions at this time? Do you have those available?
It is that the very first item is incorporating the staff direction that would give finance to make any changes to the mayor's recommended budget and any changes that are set forth in any tables, any schedules, any financial plans.
Very good. All right. Are there any questions on those staff directions or technical amendments? We have Council President Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I missed. Are you on speaker management?
Yep.
Okay. Just a question then, Mr. Ruff, and it's very elementary. So if we received an additional $596,000 in CDBG, what would be the process then for using those dollars? Does that mean they're unallocated?
Mr. Chair, Council President Johnson, number one is yes, they are unallocated.
Okay.
2 is, as you are aware, there are significant restrictions on what we can use CDBG dollars for.
But they could be used for purposes that are CDBG eligible.
That's correct.
And it doesn't need to, what's the word I want to say? It doesn't need to go to existing programs, CDBG programs. Could it go to something new that is CDBG eligible?
Mr. Chair, Council President Latonia can comment on this as well, but historically we have reallocated to existing just because there are less revenues than are necessary for existing programs. We've seen decreases in funding for those. So historically we have reallocated program revenues, but certainly new expenditures that are eligible could replace that. We also, I would say, like to get that money out the door as quickly as possible. The federal government who administers CDBG doesn't like it when we have large balances, and so there is some urgency every year to spend those dollars as well.
All right. Thank you. And then on the So this one FTE for the sex trafficking grant for the police department, would that increase the complement then of police officers recommended in the mayor's budget to 16 then?
Mr. Chair, Council President Johnson, Ms. Green is nodding her head yes. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think in terms of maybe a little specificity on the public art as well, if that wasn't clear, the mayor's recommended budget, because we had the Streets and Parks program come in after the CLIC process, there was not the typical capital budgeting process, and so there was less than the 1.5%, which by ordinance that was for 2017 in public art. And so that amount then, if we wanted to include the Streets and Parks capital bonding for 2017, is an increase in $198,000 for public art. We are recommending that if the council chooses to pass these amendments, that the $198,000 would come from $4.2 million of property and evidence warehouse. That project is an important project, but we don't have a site identified yet, and so it's not ready to go right away, and we may be able to get additional funding in 18 if necessary for that project. And so that amount would be reduced to $4.2 million down to just over $4 million, and the other $198,000 would be allocated to public art.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruff. Council Vice President Glidden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Council President for some clarifying questions that helped me a bit. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding the sex trafficking grant. How many years of funding is that? Maybe you said it and I just missed it. So,
Mr. Chair, Council Vice President Glidden, I'll defer to Ms. Green on what knowledge we have on the grant.
and kind of what's the expectation with the grant as to when we start funding the position? Usually there's a...
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Dillon, could you repeat the question for me, please?
The question is, there is a budget item to increase one FTE for sex trafficking grant, and I asked how many years does that grant provide funding for?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Glidden, the funding for the grant is one year, I should say, from January 1 to December 31st of 2017. So that FTE would also be one time.
Oh, so that, okay, because the council president had asked if this increased our officer complement of adding officers from 15 to 16. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. This is an officer position, correct? It just seems like pretty short funding for an officer position, and I'm assuming we're then agreeing that we're going to continue the funding, so that would need to be incorporated into our next year's budget.
Mr. Chair, Council Vice President Glidden, I think if we want more detailed information on this grant, I'd recommend we contact somebody in the police department to come and speak on this and let the screen.
Chair Quincy, Council Vice President Glidden, it is an analyst position. I just received clarification from Robin.
Okay. So then that kind of goes back to Council President's question. So our addition of police officers would not change that number. It just changes another civilian position within the police department.
It's an additional FTE in the police department, but it is not a sworn police officer.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
I appreciate the clarification.
Right. Good.
I think for us, anyway,
yes,
that's an important distinction.
Yep.
Good. Are there additional questions for the technical amendments as presented? Okay, not seeing any. I will move those amendments. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Those items are carried forward. Thank you very much. So now we can begin the first set of amendments, and I'm going to recognize Councilmember Johnson, Andrew Johnson, in the hopes that because I think we have a couple out in front of us that he can speak to. So, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two separate motions to make, and I'd like to do those sequentially. The first is titled Budget Amendment Motion. It's by myself, my colleagues, Councilmember Fry, Goodman, and Warsami. And I would like to go ahead and formally move that item and then speak on it.
Good, please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is to establish a small business support team of 3 FTE to directly help small businesses navigate city processes across the enterprise. It is something that I'm happy that we've worked with staff on, have the support of the coordinator's office, mayor's office, and colleagues as well. I think we all know the need here around helping our small business community be successful because they add so much to our city in terms of jobs and vibrancy and making it a special place. And this is a really needed team and a team that will really be expanding upon our existing commitment today to our small business community. And so I'll save, I think, the majority of my comments for our full budget adoption, but I'd like to see if colleagues have any questions or any discussion on this.
Okay. For the motion in front of us, are there any conversation or questions for Councilmember Johnson? Not seeing any. For that item, all those in... I'm sorry, I missed it. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at craziness here. Excuse me. Councilmember Glidden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I know that we have heard quite a bit from our small business community. I would say over quite a period of time, even though kind of the conversation around the small business office has been more focused in recent months. And so I just want to say thank you to Councilmember Andrew Johnson for his work, I think, coordinating a lot of pieces to try to find a way to address what is this need in a responsible manner, looking for good funding sources, and also putting together, I think, a good combination of authors that shows the breadth of the outreach work that you did to make sure we had a good product that would be well supported. So I just wanted to say thank you to you as well as to the other authors, Fry, Goodman, and Warsami, for your work on this, as well as to staff within the city and community members from the business community, all who have kind of voiced their thoughts on how to move this piece forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Bender, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief, but wanted to echo my thanks to Councilmember Johnson and the other council members who have brought this full proposal forward. We've been talking about this since we took office, and representing a ward that's full of small businesses. I've spent a lot of time talking with small business advocates and owners as we refine the details of this proposal. In order to show my strong support, I would like to add myself as an author.
Thank you. Additional comments from Councilmember Bender? Just wanted to check in. Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to thank Councilmember Andrew Johnson for coming over to my office to talk to me about this effort. And I am very supportive in working together to find ways to help our small business community thrive. And I have a question about the approach. And it's mostly just really a question. I don't foresee an amendment, but I just wanted to get a little bit more clarity. When we talk about small businesses in the city, we have a variety of different kinds and types of small businesses. So, for example, you have the Taco Taxi on East Lake Street, which has maybe 3 to 5 employees. And then you have somebody like Kim Bartman, who owns, a lot of different kinds of businesses, Tiny Diner and so forth. And so I'm just trying to figure out what is the philosophy or the framework that would be implemented through some of this to ensure that we have a differentiated approach at working with the business owners who are, essentially like a micro business in a way, and also who might have, a multilingual staff or whose primary language is Spanish or Somali. And, I see that you're proposing 3 FTEs, which I'm supportive of, but I'm just wondering, are those FTEs going to be, culturally, relevant? Are they going to be bilingual, bicultural, to be able to work with the different kinds of businesses that we have in the city that happen to be under the small business category?
Was there
That's my question.
For Councilmember Johnson, perhaps you could address that, or other council members in the queue. I see Councilmember Goodman as well.
First of all, Councilmember Johnson has put an enormous amount of work into making this happen, and I just want to note that he has looked at many sources, talked to a lot of people internally and externally, and has done a really great job on this. My understanding of this is that the whole point is to help those smallest of businesses that can't hire a lobbyist, that are not familiar with the city systems, that have problems with health licensing and business licensing, in order to figure out how to get from here to there. I think it's within the city's overall goals to make sure that we reach out in a multilingual, multicultural way. So I don't think that needs to be reiterated or noted in this, because that's how we do our business now. But the intent is not to be helping the big businesses or even people who have experience in the system, but making sure that we help those that don't have experience in the system. That is the whole intent. So hopefully that answers your question, but that is the point. And I don't think we need to be telling the coordinator's office, you need to hire someone who speaks this, that, or the other language, because that's what they're already looking to do.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was an explicit intent, because I want to vote for this, and I'm going to support it, and I would like to actually add my name to this motion. But I just wanted to be clear that that's the spirit that I'm joining this conversation in, is that I'm really hoping to elevate the voice of those multilingual small businesses. So thank you, Councilmember Andrew Johnson, and the other leading co-authors on this.
Thank you. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Councilmember Johnson, it's been a pleasure working on this with you. You've been bird dogging this one for the very beginning. It's an excellent initiative, and it certainly took a lot of work to cobble the funds together as well as figure out the framework. I think this is a proposal that's very much needed in our city. And to answer Councilmember Cano's question, one of the prime examples is, in my ward anyway, is Delmonico's. Delmonico's is a long-time institution in Northeast Minneapolis. It closed down. It was purchased by Jesse, and a good friend of mine, an individual who has championed this product in a neighborhood that has oftentimes been forgotten, in the Beltrami neighborhood. And when she initially came to the city, Delmonico's is a really old place, so it needed all sorts of repairs, and it had to get up to code, and there was all these different health issues, and they had to have a sort of a mop basin that they had to put in. And these costs really add up, especially for small businesses. And when the answer is immediately no, not a no but, not a yes but, people run into trouble, and you can't, excuse me, and they're not able to navigate. So I'm really pleased to see this move forward. I think I think this will be a good economic boost for our city, and I think it'll certainly help a lot of the small local businesses that are presently having trouble. Thank you.
I know the mayor is in queue, and if I could recognize Council President Johnson first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I only hope, Councilmember Fry, that the new owner of Delmonico's is as wonderful as the previous people were. When you'd walk in, they'd call you honey. It was a great place. But I also, again, this was really great staff work. So I want to thank staff for helping us find the dollars within the existing budget to prioritize what is a really important effort. And thank the mayor for putting the first position in the budget. So thank you.
Mayor Hodges. First of all, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Committee members, thank you for letting me speak in the committee. And the intention when I put the budget together for 2017 and put this position in was to be responsive to some great ideas and really well described and well documented need that our small business owners were giving to us about what the need was, what the problem was, and what the solution was. And it fits in with the Business Made Simple work that I've been doing in partnership with many of you these last few years to really make Minneapolis, the city of Minneapolis, serve well our small business community. And so I want to thank Councilmember Johnson this morning for your work and all the authors for the work this morning to really flesh out what this is and could be for the next year or so. And for me, the intention of having fewer positions, whether it be 1, 2, or 3, as opposed to an entire unit is this. I want our entire enterprise to be a get-to-yes city. That yes, we serve a regulatory function, and there are times and places where you simply say no. But the expectation that we get to have and that business owners in the city get to have of city staff is that it doesn't stop at no. It's, I understand what you're trying to do, and let's help you get there. and that the intention here is, yes, there's a role to play to make sure that our small business owners know all the opportunities that are available to them through the city of Minneapolis and otherwise, and that we are doing the kind of outreach that we need to do. But also the plan is to make sure everybody in the enterprise is interested in participating in that reality, that we all see ourselves, that all our employees see themselves as invested in helping entrepreneurs, small business owners, people who want to invest in Minneapolis succeed. And so the intention behind this today, and I know that we share it, is yes, a vision for a navigator, or yes, a vision for here's how we get through city systems. But beyond that, how do we make sure that everybody who works with small business in the city of Minneapolis is steeped in an ethos of customer service and getting to yes? So I'm excited to support this today. I was excited to work with you to hammer out the details of this and look forward to the next stage of what we're going to be able to do for business owners in Minneapolis.
Thank you very much for those comments. I would certainly join in the crowd in complimenting Councilmember Johnson and all of the authors who put in so much work in this, including the mayor for presenting the initial concept and for us refining it through the process with the input from the public. So thank you very much for all that work. Further comments on this motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That item passes. Thank you very much. Councilmember Johnson, while you still have the floor, could I ask you to take your staff direction up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a separate staff direction here in front of you. We've been privileged as well to work with our wonderful staff on this, and this is really a culmination of a number of different initiatives, more long-term thinking about how we shift the enterprise to being more friendly for our small businesses and businesses alike. It includes things such as getting a business portal online, which a lot of other major cities have, to even as we look at municipal office space, factoring in any sort of incubator space or development design centers or those sort of things. So it's really a great, wonderful staff direction, even formalizes a small business council to really aid with this effort. And so I'd like to go ahead and move this staff direction forward. Also, I want to add in my thanks as well to all our outside advocates and partners who have been with us on this effort, and all the small business owners who've made their voices heard on these issues. And again, I think I'll save for Wednesday the majority of my comments, but I just want to really extend my appreciation to my colleagues for their help with this and their support and for their kind words and for their willingness to invest in our small business community, which invests so much into Minneapolis.
Thank you very much for those comments. Are there any other comments or questions on this item? I see Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note that while I was very excited and happy to support adding the additional staff beyond what we had advocated and asked for in the mayor's budget, I'm actually even at least equally excited, if not more, about this staff direction, because I think what we really need to do to get to the vision that the mayor just articulated is to restructure a lot of our existing staff as well, or not to dictate a specific outcome, but to really change the nature of how all of us interact with our small business community. Again, in my ward with hundreds of small businesses, my staff spend an extraordinary amount of time going on site and meeting with small businesses, communicating about our loan programs, troubleshooting issues. I'm not sure if there's a business that's opened in the 10th ward since I took office that didn't require some additional support from my ward staff, and we're happy to do it. We're happy to support each business as it opens, but hopefully we can get to a place where they don't need so much additional troubleshooting and support. And so I think that this is really great for our long-term thinking about how to guide the work of these additional staff, as well as to hopefully take a look at what all of our current staff are doing and how we could always continue to improve, to highlight the good work, and really get to a place where every time we're interacting with our small business community, it's in a supportive way that's, as the mayor said, getting to yes. I also wanted to echo the thanks to the Metro IBA and to the Main Street Alliance, and again, many of my own small businesses for all of their engagement and hours of time meeting and talking about this over the last several months.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Cano.
I'm trying to make sure that I'm on the speaker management deal. I was having problems with it earlier. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I am very supportive of this effort, and I think it's another slam dunk by Team Andrew Johnson, Frey, Goodman, and Warsame. I had been chatting with Councilmember Andrew Johnson about doing a friendly amendment to this, and it's in line with the previous comments I had made earlier regarding ensuring that we have an explicit and intentional articulation of the work that we want to do with the businesses of color in our city, our diverse business owners. So I would like to make a motion to make a friendly amendment to item number 1 here within the direction, which would read, if amended, review programs and business lines within CPED to determine how best to reconfigure workflows, which is still the same as it is written now, and our business lines in order to accelerate small business efforts, and this is where the amendment comes in, along with aligning these efforts to our city's racial equity goals. And then the rest of the language would stay the same.
Okay. I'm going to take that as an amendment to this motion. Any conversation or questions on that amendment? Not seeing any. All those in favor of the amended language as presented by Councilmember Cano?
Aye.
Opposed? So that item is amended. I assume that that's part of the underlying motion that has been presented by Councilmember Johnson. Is there further comments on Councilmember Johnson's now amended motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor of that, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That item carries. So thank you very much, and thank you for that amendment, Councilmember Cano. Let's see, our next item, I just wanted to point out a couple of clerical issues just to make sure, because we know we have a lot of paper flying around up here. I want to make sure we have the current copy. And if Mr. Carl or Ms. Giesler, if you'd like to comment on what you suggested to me about making sure we have copies, if appropriate, or is that in the presentation of the speech? Just to make sure we're talking about the right document.
Mr. Chair, as we start passing out the paper, it would be helpful if we could define each of those amendments a little bit more. Simply saying a council member's amendment, if they have multiples, it's hard for us to distinguish between which one we're talking about.
Very good. Thank you very much for that. We'll try to keep track of that and be as clear as possible. Next in queue is Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a written motion before you, and I think everyone has gotten a copy of that. And this is a motion amending the 2017 mayor's recommended budget for CPED on a one-time basis to replace residential housing fund of $250,000 in CPED with $250,000 from CDBG grant fund program income, and increase CPED budget in the residential housing fund by $250,000 to be used for infill housing initiative. And I'd like to make our move that for approval.
Okay, that's been moved. Would you like to make any comments on that?
Sure.
As we begin that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to this, my understanding of it is that it is a shifting of funds or a swapping of funds. And, Ms. Green is here, and maybe she can explain a little bit further on that. But, this is in regards to working on an infill housing group that has looked at the issue of 300 plus empty lots on the north side and figuring out how we can build homes on those lots, and eventually getting to a point where we can build mini homes on those lots and catching up with the market at some point. And so this is a step in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Council Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Councilmember Yang, this might be a little bit of a question to you since I don't see housing staff here. I am supportive of this motion. Sean Broom in your office did show it to me right before this meeting, and but I did have a question, which is I understood from Mr. Broom that we may already have a policy that directs how infill housing might be allocated. And what I'm trying to get out here is my hope is that a portion of this can be dedicated to longer term affordability strategies. I know that you have been working maybe with others as well as staff on the infill housing policy. which has not yet passed through the council, and maybe that guidance is coming forward in that document. So I just want to have an assurance from yourself or others who know more details. And if the detail isn't there, maybe we could put it in your motion or add to that we are able to dedicate some of this funding to ensuring preservation of long-term affordability, or when we create, I guess this is more about creation, that long-term affordability is part of the dedication of those funds. And I think Councilmember Goodman looks.
I'd be happy to do that.
Mr.
Maybe
Chair.
we could take Councilmember Goodman's comment on that. That would help a lot.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goodman.
Due to my inability to manage a very large agenda, we were not able to take up the infill housing policy discussion in committee this week. And that is a place to determine kind of what the parameters are of the program. But what I can tell you from my point of view as the chair is it's not worth doing if we're not going to have some level of long-term affordability. The idea is not to just build houses, have people move into them, and 3 years later take the subsidy and run to the suburbs. That's not something I could support as part of the infill housing process. So we are going to discuss it in committee. It's going to be the first item on the agenda and the first council committee meeting in January. And then there's time also, I think, for anyone to chime in with staff. There are probably places where it makes sense to tie the subsidy to a period of time that they live there. And then there's probably room for land trust or land bank type models, because we're talking about doing 800 of these. So there's going to have to be a lot of discussion. Each one will probably have a separate set of circumstances, as well as some geographic diversity as well. So none of those policy things have been worked out, but what Councilmember Yang's trying to do is make sure there's enough money in the program to get going in year one. They wanted another $1 million. And I was one of the people saying, no way, we got to see if it works first. Let's put a policy together and see if we can do X number of houses and what the need is and what the affordability level is, and then fully ask the mayor to fully fund it in next year's budget. So I appreciate the fact that Councilmember Yang found a source that's a legitimate source in CDGB eligible areas, and that we're going to work towards trying to figure out what the affordability level is. But rest assured, I do not want to be building wealth for people in a very short time frame to then take the wealth out of that house and move somewhere else. We want long-term affordability.
Okay.
Please continue.
So thank you very much. I want to just say thank you for adding in on that. And I had known from speaking with our housing director, Andrea Brennan, that she had been working on incorporating just these kinds of parameters in the infill housing policy coming forward. And it's just helpful, since the policy didn't get discussion yet, for me to hear a little bit from colleagues about their commitment to this. I am comfortable waiting so that can go through our typical process, but it is important to me, as well as I think to many others on the council, that that is a substantial component of how we're making future investment in this manner. So thank you again, Councilmember Yang, for doing the work to find the source, and I'll be supporting this.
Thank you. Additional comments and questions? Councilmember Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Yang, just so I understand this, this was just presented to me a few minutes ago. Is currently the infill housing initiative has no funding, zero funding?
At this point, the funding that is in there would be existing funding within CPED, but I'm not sure what the number is. But I mean, this is some funds that we can place towards the infill housing as well.
Would that be helpful to have Ms. Green, if you could respond to that from a staff perspective?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Connell, currently in the mayor's recommended budget, there's $250,000 for the infill program.
Okay, and is that one time, ongoing, and where is the source? Is that general fund or?
Ms. Green, do you know the source of that? Was that CDBG?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Connell, currently the funding for the infill that's in the mayor's recommended is from the general fund, not CDBG funding. This additional request that's being made by Councilmember Blaine is from, not from CDBG, but from development funds.
Right, so it's So currently in the budget, we have, the mayor proposed $250,000 for the infill housing initiative, $250,000 from the general fund. Is it ongoing or one time? I apologize. I just got this like right now, so that's why I'm digging in here.
No problem. I just don't want to say the wrong thing, so
Nope,
I'm
yep.
verifying.
Unless, do you know, Lisa?
I should know this.
Is it ongoing or one time?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano, it's one-time funding.
One time, okay. And so then, Councilmember Yang, then this motion would be to add an additional $250,000 that would be moved from the residential housing fund. No, that's the same thing. So where's the additional 250 being pulled from? This